Previously on a Scowl Method podcast. But something. You have to do something here, okay? Because it's. I mean, if you're really, like I said, I separated it out to two groups here. If you're into your health and your wellness, it's basically the key to unlock almost everything. So I almost want to, and I don't like these broad stroking statements or anything like that, but I find it very difficult to believe that one is very interested in their own health and wellness and they're not on a resistance training program of some sort, right? Like it was like like creatine was like this dangerous drug that was changing people and making them angry and everything like that. Yeah, so the I guess the perception of creatine has come a pretty far way from being potentially a steroid to being probably one of the best supplements to exist, right? Like, it's one of those things. It has just so many benefits. Forgiveness, in a loose definition, is the act of letting go feelings of resentment or vengeance, right? Against someone who has harmed you, or from a biblical perspective, who has sinned against you, right? So you're basically letting it go. You're pardoning them, whoever that person may be, or whoever that group of people may be, all right? Even if it's yourself, all right? What's up, y'all? What's going on? Listen, I'm going to tell you up front, I have a massive headache, and this is about the third time I tried to do just the opening. So I'm struggle through this a little bit, but I wanted to kind of open up with saying, well, let me put it this way. I've been getting a lot of love on TikTok as of late. And of all places, TikTok is probably the last place I thought I was going to get any type of response or anything like that, right? But I've been getting quite a bit of love on TikTok. And I just wanted to put out there that I appreciate everybody who responds, everybody who comments, everybody who likes, everybody who shares all this stuff, because it's definitely not an easy thing to try and grow a podcast or a channel coming from the podcast or anything like that. So I definitely appreciate, like, if you followed or if you shared, if you liked or anything like that, I appreciate you. If you're a YouTube subscriber, I definitely appreciate you, right? Because I have these goals that I'm aiming at here, and I'll just put them straight out. So one of them, from the YouTube perspective, I have a goal of 1 million subscribers. But here's the thing, that seems like an impossible goal for me. Right? That seems like an impossible goal for this podcast. And the only reason I say that is because this is a health and wellness podcast. So it's already kind of in a little bit of a niche market, right? Because it's not like specifically like bodybuilding or CrossFit or anything like that. It's a health and wellness podcast that aims to help people out through the search of and discovery of truth. There's not that many people who are gonna I mean, I'm sure there's a million people out there who look at it that way and who would want to line up with that, but it seems like a very lofty goal to me. Now maybe I'm wrong, and that's perfectly fine. I would like to be wrong on that, but it's still a goal, and it's what I'm aiming at nonetheless. 1 million YouTube subscribers. Right now, as this recording, I think I'm at 54. I have a ways to go, but I appreciate each and every one of you who have subscribed thus far. Okay. Another goal I have, and another goal that I'm aiming at here, right? Because I have this idea of goals. I'm not big into goal setting, in a traditional sense, but actually, I'll talk about that later on in the podcast. So, um, another goal that I'm aiming at here is 1 million downloads of the podcast. And that's just a thing that I kind of like. If I get 1 million downloads, like, you have to be putting up something pretty decent, or enough content, right, within the podcast to get to 1 million downloads, right? And that's kind of like branches off into my additional goal, and this is really a goal for me. I want to do 100 podcast episodes straight, without fail. So every other week until I get to episode 100, then maybe I'll think about taking a break. But the idea is, if I get 100 episodes in, I have a pretty good idea of how to do this thing, right? And it'll definitely take me forever to get there, but I'll know for sure by the time I get to 100 episodes whether this is a thing or whether it's not. And even if it turns out not to be a thing that I would want to continue, or that a thing that maybe isn't as valuable to continue on with, at the very least, I would have 100 episodes of a podcast, and then the content that's coming from those 100 episodes of the podcast out there and available for everyone. So those are the goals: 1 million subscribers, 1 million downloads, and 100 episodes of the pod. And if you feel so inclined to, I would definitely appreciate if you would join me in this journey, because it's a journey. No matter which way you look at it, this is definitely a journey. Like, especially like days like today, I'm struggling a little bit, right? So we'll get there over time, and I'm just going to keep chopping away at it, right? But I just wanted to drop that out there. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all for sure. Okay. We are in episode 12. And basically the title of this episode is restrict your blood flow. What are we talking about here, right? Like, so it's like, the main topic where we're going to talk about is blood flow restriction training. And that sounds like a crazy thing to do. And I was like, why would you want to restrict your blood flow while working out? But surprise, surprise, there's some benefits to it. And actually, it's something I've been doing for years. I've had clients do it for years as well. So there's a lot of I guess, anecdotal evidence that it does good things for you, right? On my end, but there's also some studies that back up this stuff as well. So that'll be our main topic. Actually, the quick tip is another form of training called offset training, or offset loading training, and that's a novel. I mean, I guess it's not really that new, but it's a form of training that you could do where basically you just have one weight, like a heavier weight on one side than the other. I'll go into all the details of that, and because there are some pretty decent benefits coming from that as well. And then for the random topic, we're going to talk about being productive and how to stay productive, right? So, like, for me, I have these tips basically and tactics that will help you stay productive. I mean, I have a very busy life. Without some of these tips, I really wouldn't be able to get anything done. So I'm going to kind of just put out there for y'all to, take or work with or not, or completely reject, but I'm just putting them out there so that you can, kind of look them over and see what works for you. Now, I'm doing something a little bit different for the end of this episode. So listen all the way through to the end, after the outro song and all that fun stuff, because I was there's so many things I want to talk about on this podcast that they don't necessarily line up with the base of the podcast, right? So I decided to do some more like random stuff, but all I'm doing is like a quick one sentence thing, just a statement. I'm just making random statements on things that are potentially going on. And so like I said, you have to listen to the very end to kind of hear what I put out there a little bit. Now, I'm not putting them out there. I'm not making it an argument one way or the other. I'm just kind of stating the way certain things are and certain facts as they stand, as this recording, right? What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well out there. Listen, I'm Coach Evan. This is Say Cheese and Lift Studio, and you're listening to the Scout Method Podcast, your one-stop shop for not only physical fitness, but mental fitness, emotional fitness, and spiritual fitness. Let's get to this episode. All right, for the quick tip, offset it off. That was corny. But listen, I want to talk about offset training or offset loading training. And basically what it is you're loading the weight. It's a form of resistance training in which you're loading the weights of each side differently, right? So as an example, let's talk about barbell deadlift. It's offset barbell deadlift. You would have a plate on one side and then one side of the bar, and then the other side, it would be empty, right? And you would still do a regular straight up deadlift. And there are a lot of benefits to doing offset loading training, and I'll start to go over in a little bit more detail as we go along. But you could use barbells, you could use dumbbells, kettlebells, bands, like pretty much most of the stuff that you could use for just regular resistance training anyway. Because I think there are even some body weight offset loaded exercises as well. I think about that a little bit more, but I think there are some anyway. So it's just like basically it's just a slight tweak on your regular resistance training program, right? What I would typically do and how I do it and how I usually program it. Well, let me before I even get into that, let's talk about why you would want to do something like this, because it does seem kind of silly up front, right? The first reason why I would do offset loading training is to correct muscle imbalances, right? So, we all kind of have it, like one side is stronger than the other, or one arm is stronger than the other, one leg is stronger than the other, right? Or you have your weaker side, so on and so forth. What offset training does is it kind of corrects those, and it balances you out again, right? It corrects those muscle imbalances. And I would often program that type of training for myself as like a tune-up kind of sort of, right? So like a short 2-3 week mini program or cycle within a larger program, just to make sure that I'm not training in any imbalances. So this is also a really good form of training, and just thought that popped into my head. This is a really good form of training for certain athletes that are very one-sided, like golfers, right? Offset training is really good for golfers to make sure that they don't actually train in and play in their own imbalances, and that acts as like an injury prevention program or modality as well. Same thing with like a lot of you could take any athlete in general, right? Just to make sure that they are balanced and also limiting their risk of injury, right? So it's really, really clutch in terms of balancing out any of the imbalances. So you have your stronger side, weaker side, just keep it even. It also was pretty decent for like if you have just if you have those imbalances due to injury or like surgery already, right? Someone coming on the back end where you're trying to recover, and you notice like, hey, look, I had shoulder surgery not too long ago, or even if you had shoulder surgery like 10 years ago and it's never been the same, you have never really regained that strength. Offset training is a good idea or a good thing to do in order to kind of get that strength up a little bit more. So another reason would be to or rather, another reason why I program and use my self offset training is because it forces your body to operate and to lift or to do resistance training in general in like pristine form. You have to have pristine form. Because so you can't think about this. Let's go back to the deadlift example again, right? We have a plate on one side and nothing on the other. So that dumbbell, or I'm sorry, that barbell is going to lean this way a little bit more because that's where the plate is. So it's going to lean towards the side that you have the plate on. You can't necessarily just pull that off the ground quickly because then you'll lose the whole thing, right? You'll lose the barbell, you lose the weight, and it doesn't work that way. Also, you run a risk of injury, right? So you have to slow the movements down. They have to be controlled. In essence, you have to basically be spot on with your form. I love offset training in this instance because it allows you to kind of feel the muscles even more that are working to do the deadlift or do whatever exercise, offset loading exercise that you're doing. So in this instance, right, when you're doing a offset loaded deadlift, that weight that's on one side, like you have to keep your body still straight even though you're being pulled this way. So it's great core activation. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few, but it's like you have to go slow enough. You have to activate every muscle that's required to lift it properly. So it forces your body in a perfect form, basically. Even beyond that, or not beyond that, but like that really happens because of like it improves your neuromuscular drive. And that's just a fancy way of saying that you feel your muscles working, right? So it's also a good way to get you to feel the muscle that is being worked at that point in time. And I, hinted at it, just a few seconds ago, but it's also a superior core exercise modality, whatever you want to call it. Core activation is at peak when you're doing offset training, right? Back to the deadlift again. Because the weight is pulling you to this side, right? You're going to the side that the weight is on. You're forcing your stabilizers in your core, obliques, your spinal erectors, like all of that stuff. Even the transverse abs, like all of that, the pretty abs too. All of that stuff has to stay tight to keep you stable, right? And I particularly like the offset deadlift because this is a little nuanced, right? But when you're lifting when you're doing a deadlift with that weight on that one side and you're keeping your core stable, this is what you have to do for a regular deadlift anyway. But beyond that, it's almost like a little bit of a push and a pull that you're trying to do just to keep the bar even. And I love that because you have to activate. It's almost like it's forcing you to activate even more muscles that you probably wouldn't if it was all even, right? I typically don't feel like I'm activating my front delt or my chest, but because I'm also kind of pushing down this way, I'm activating that my serratus anterior, like a little bit of my teres major, a little bit of my lats, like all that stuff gets activated as I'm just doing a slight push down on this side just to make sure that the bar stays even, but I'm still lifting with this side, right? And that was a little diversion. But anyway, it's great for core activation. It's absolutely great for core activation. It's some of the best exercises that you could do, honestly, for just building up that core stiffness, building up that stability, building up that strength. Now, I keep going back to the barbell, the offset deadlifter, and I mean, it's probably one of my favorite offset exercises. And typically I break it out, or I do maybe two versions the most often, right? So I'll do the barbell version, and then I'll do a dumbbell version where I have one heavier dumbbell than the other. But those are the two I do the most, and those are the two I pretty much program the most. Now, when I was chasing all of my barbell PRs, like my barbell back squat, barbell bench press, barbell deadlift, I had a 4-week cycle in all of those, a 4-week offset training cycle in all of those programs. because that I believe really helped me get to my PRs in all of those areas. So it's really, really good for that strength. And again, it just comes down to training the proper movements. It comes down to building that core stability, and it also can add to your strength in general, right? Like especially with the squat. Oh man, I think I added a good 40 pounds to my squat as soon as I started offset training in the middle of programs. So I would go. So typically, what I would do is 4 weeks of a strength program, right? Then 4 weeks of the offset loading program, and then go back in 4 weeks of another strength program, and everything pretty much blew up in that last 4 weeks. So I definitely love offset training. So to start, you just want to if you're going to start offset training, don't start off with like 3 plates on one side and then thinking you're going to do something here, right? No, start off light. Start off light and get the rhythm down, get the mechanics down a little bit. But definitely start off light. Then remember to keep slow and controlled movements, which equates to have good form, right? Focus on keeping your core tight, which equates to balance, right? And work both sides, which equates to symmetry, right? Making sure. So those 3 things, like as you're going through an offset training program, just keep those things in mind. Start off light, keep your core tight, dropping bars. So start off light, keep your core tight, work both sides, slow and controlled movements, okay? All right. So that's offset training. Give it a shot. Rehab to ripped. What do I mean? What am I talking about? I'm talking about blood flow restriction training. What? Yes, restricting your blood flow during exercise. Why? Really good reasons. But look, and I know it sounds crazy, but basically what you do, what it is, blood flow restriction training, or BFR, is a modality of training in which you take a band, a wrap, or these specially made cuffs, and you wrap them around your limbs to restrict blood flow during exercise. Now, I know that sounds straight crazy, like, bro, what are you talking about? But just hang with me for a little bit here, okay? How it works is, so what you do basically is you take, let's just say you take the wrap or the cuff or whatever, and you would wrap it around either your arms or your legs, right? So you would take one, I'm not sure that there are many studies done on people who have done both, like at the same time. I traditionally have not. But anyway, for example, if you're going to wrap it around your arm, you would wrap it around your upper arm just under the armpit, right? So, again, upper arm here, right? And if you were to wrap it around your leg, you would wrap it around your leg. Now, they have to get really, really friendly if you're wrapping it around your leg, because it's really like right at your groin, like just under your butt cheek line, right? So they got to get pretty personal with these bands and cuffs here. So, but it's upper leg or upper arm at the end of the day, and you will tighten it up to a tightness of like 6 or 7 out of 10. And basically the idea is to restrict venous blood flow. Okay, and that's basically it. Now, you don't want to over tighten those things, right? You don't want to make them so tight that you end up feeling like numbness or something like that, or pain, or if you don't want things to start changing colors, like you don't want purple arms, okay? That's not good. So you probably have it too tight if that's the case, right? So there's a level of tightness that is just going to restrict the blood flow, the venous blood flow, but it's not going to, completely cut off all blood flow to your arm in the first place. So it's just, yeah, so we just want to be very mindful of that one. And I'm going to repeat this probably throughout. You don't want to over tighten those things, okay? But what does it do, though? So, well, and I guess so before you even get to that point, so after you actually get the cuffs on, you just don't sit there, right, with the cuffs on. So what you do is you put the cuffs on, and then you perform a lightweight set of something, some exercise, but it's supposed to be lightweight and high rep, right? And then you release the cuffs after each set. So basically, you pop the cuffs on, do a set of 30 with really silly lightweight, and then pop the cuffs, release it a little bit, and then you get ready to go into another set, pop them back on, make sure the tightness is right, and then another set of 30, and you'll do that way. So that's basically the way you would do it. Now, why would you do this, or rather, what does it do? Right? First and foremost, what it does is it increases muscle gain. It is very it's effective in muscle growth, right? And it does that by way of this idea of metabolic stress. There have been quite a few studies lately, even more so, I guess, concerning the whole idea of metabolites, building up in your bloodstream, and that causes the muscle growth. And it's not quite like that, but I'm gonna break it down a little bit for you. And I'm trying not to sound too, because I'm not necessarily like a molecular biologist or anything like that. But so I don't want to go too far into the weeds and end up saying something that's patently incorrect. But this is through the studies and stuff that I looked to, and the various doctors that I've spoken to. This is what I gather. Okay, so the main mechanism for this muscle growth here is the metabolic stress, and the BFR training does that by way of setting your muscles up in a hypoxic environment, or in other words, a low oxygen environment. As your muscle fatigues, it basically forms these byproducts or these chemicals as a result. Now, keep in mind, like the metabolic stress, I know it sounds like a kind of a complex term, but if I were to put it as simply as possible, it's just when your muscles are tired, right? So, and I know I'm probably missing a few things concerning that by simplifying it that much, but essentially, for the sake of this conversation here, or for the sake of this podcast, I just want to keep it as basic as possible here, right? Metabolic stress is basically when it occurs when your muscles are tired. So that kind of link that feeling up with that, right? So the metabolic stress, or your muscles being tired, that what that does is it produces, so metabolic stress produces metabolites, and these metabolites, lactate, phosphate, creatine, hydrogen ions, they basically create, so none of those are actually directly responsible for muscle protein synthesis. At one point in time, we thought they were, right? So all you have to do is feel the burn, build up the lactate, and your muscles are going to grow. That's not necessarily the case. But what they do is they set an acidic environment within the cells, within the muscle cells. Now that causes another kind of chain reaction of things to happen as well. Ultimately, it does lead to muscle protein synthesis, but it is not a direct one-for-one here. So being in that having the muscle cells be in that acidic environment, it causes your body then to respond in a few different ways. One of those ways is your body will then recruit more of your type 2 muscle fibers, right? Those are the ones that are more prone to muscle growth anyway. Those are for the explosive movements. They burn energy faster. So you'll recruit more type 2 muscle fibers at that point with the metabolites in your system, or metabolites in your bloodstream and within the cells, because of the acidic environment that occurs due to those metabolites. You get me? I know there's an easier way for me to say this, but listen, my head is about to explode. Now, it also, that environment, that acidic environment also triggers, well, it causes cellular swelling. So you're drawing more fluid to the cell, and that some way, somehow also triggers or sets off the anabolic pathways. Anabolic meaning, growth, like, kind of what like steroids do, right? So anabolic steroids cause muscle growth. So this acetic environment that's caused by BFR kind of sets off that trigger for those anabolic pathways, basically sending the signal like, hey, time to grow, time to grow, time to grow, right? And last but not least, it also, once you're in that acetic environment, it triggers, so the metabolic stress triggers the production of and the utilization of growth hormone and IGF-1. I think insulin growth. I forgot what that stood for. Oh man, yeah. So you can look it up. IGF-1, but both are responsible for muscle growth and muscle repair. So this is how it ends up leading to muscle protein synthesis. So all of that to say, in theory, you could gain a good deal of muscle with using lighter weights and BFR training. That basically opens the door up for a lot of different populations, because there are many populations who can't lift heavy weights, right? Because one of the main modes, or one of the main pathways for muscle growth is mechanical tension. Now, if you can't put that much mechanical tension on the muscles and their bones and the joints and all that fun stuff, what BFR training says is that you're not out of luck. And this is what makes BFR training such a good rehab tool, right? Say you just got out of surgery, or not just got out of surgery. Say you've been out of surgery and you recovered enough to start, working out again, but the muscle is atrophied so much that you really can't do much of anything with it, right? Slap on some cuffs properly with the proper tightness, not so your arms are turning purple or your legs are turning purple, right? I said I was going to repeat it again and again, but slap on some cuffs and then you'll be able to use lighter weights and get the same training effect, right? It's also like even if you're training, especially if you're training around an injury. I had to do this more than a few times where I couldn't necessarily do, like, I wanted my legs to grow, but I couldn't do barbell back squats for a little bit because I was just having some knee issues. I slapped on some cuffs and I did, so things like sissy squats, and I did things like leg extensions and really, really light goblet squats. Seemed to work out just fine for me. In fact, I think, and I don't know if there's any research done on this, but I'm starting to think that it also jumpstarts the recovery process too. Because I just feel like, and again, this is purely anecdotal. This is all based on feelings. This is based on feelings, not facts right now. But I feel like my recovery was jump-started because I wasn't just continuing to hammer my knee with heavy weight, but it was also rushing and keeping all the blood there. So it's hard to get decent blood flow to your knees, right? But what I saw, like a couple studies, and again, I'm taking the studies and I'm kind of forming an anecdotal opinion here. But like I saw a couple studies where BFR training can actually help you build new, or form new, vessels and stuff like that. And I did notice that after training with BFR training for, actually it was a good deal of time, for 8 weeks, 8-week program. I noticed that my veins were bigger in general, right? I saw veins that I didn't see before, and I wasn't necessarily losing fat at that time because I was trying to gain muscle, so I was bulking. So I think there's a way that it could jumpstart the recovery process as well. Again, purely anecdotal. I don't know. I didn't see any studies on that, specifically. But it's just, just putting two and two together there. But it could be great to train not just around an injury, but train with the injury. And again, anecdotally, jumpstart the recovery process. And it's also It's also really good on active rest days, right? So like I I know a few people who just don't rest at all. Like maybe they'll take one day, usually a Sunday, where they just completely chill and they're resting. But for the most part, they're doing some form of movement every day outside of that one day. Sometimes it's lifting or whatever. What I found is like a lot of people recovered better when they did some BFR training with on their active rest days, right? So it's like, and it's something simple that you can set up like at home and grab whatever light pair of dumbbells that you have and just kind of crank out some reps. And it typically doesn't lead to much soreness or anything like that, at least from what I experienced. Now, I know there's some people who will get sore at just any movement, period. So, take this kind of for what it is, right? But that also brings up a really good, I guess, additional point where it's just like, it's really good if you have little to no equipment, right? So some time ago, it was a long time ago, it might have been last year or something like that, I did just blood flow restriction training. Like the only training that I did on my legs for a little bit was BFR walking, forwards and backwards on a treadmill. And I added a little bit of size to my legs. Now, I had to do it for a while, and I was doing it every day. But that is a way to kind of enhance the normal your normal walking, right? But if you have no equipment at all, blood flow restriction training could be a win for you in terms of gaining muscle and any well. It wouldn't necessarily be the best in terms of strength or anything like that, but it was, put up some show muscles. So you basically would like for instance, like you would wrap, if you were just you have no equipment and you just have the bands, wrap the bands around your arms, do some push-ups. And if you have, and again, you have no equipment at all, wrap the bands around your legs, do air squats. And do that every day. And do it till really do it till it burns, because it's supposed to burn. You're filling up your bloodstream with all those metabolites and you're keeping them there. So it's supposed to burn a little bit, right? So there's a way that you could use blood flow restriction training with nothing, right? By itself, right? You can also use it, like if you have a light pair of dumbbells, that makes it even better, right? You can definitely use that and come up with a decent wherever you are, wherever you go program that you can do it at any time. So that's, I think, in my opinion, that's a big win in terms of being able to stay active, right? Like, and just as an aside, is like there's so many people that think that I'm gonna change my life, I'm gonna get to the gym and I'm gonna do all this stuff. It's just like, how I started? I started because I was too embarrassed to go to the gym. And I started straight up in my house, right on my living room floor, with a set of 10-pound dumbbells. Right? So it's just like you don't necessarily have to take these big leaps up front. Typically, that's how a lot of people end up getting hurt, and then they become disillusioned with the whole process, and then they're out of the game. And it's just like, no, just start off small. Start off small. And take those little small baby steps and count them each as individual victories, and then you keep going from there. And that, I guess, yeah, that's an aside. My bad. So, if you have little to no equipment, BFR bands are a win for you. Now, look, you can even run the experiment that I ran and do the BFR walking, right? And that'll enhance your walking. Ooh, or you could do the BFR walking with a weighted vest on. That's if you're crazy. But you could also do, or look, you could do BFR walking lunges with a weighted vest on and a barbell on your back for time. Nah, don't do that. Don't do that mess. I guess that's me just taking a jab at all these crazy workouts, doing like, look, what type of Batman military type superhero training are you doing out here? And what is the point? So I'm going to make it a thing then. BFR walking lunges with a weighted vest on and a barbell on your back for time. Nah, please, y'all, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. But that's it. That's the whole thing right there, right? Like BFR training, blood flow restriction training, or I think they also call it blood occlusion training. Um, that is a very good training modality to use, especially if you're low on equipment, especially if you're coming off of an injury, especially if you're coming off of a surgery, right? So that's why we called it rehab to ripped. All right, so take that, run with it, but don't walking lunge with it. All right, look, so I have a lot of various things going on in life, as I'm sure you all do too, right? But I have multiple jobs, a family, and these big, giant dreams and goals that I am very, well, how do I want to say, relentless in pursuing. So I look at all of these like productivity tips, right? And there's no shortage of them, mind you, right? You go on YouTube, go on the internet, go on anywhere. There is no shortage of productivity tips out there. And so I just wanted to basically just drop in here and say, here's the ones that worked the best for me and what keeps me kind of going along. Some of them are a little bit easier than others. And I'm not always 100% on every single one of these tips, but these are the tips and the tactics that I've used to really maintain, at least forward momentum here, right? First one is basically prioritizing your task. And I know that sounds very simple. I kind of take a little bit of a different spin on it, right? So I try to prioritize what needs to be done for the day in a way that lines up with my values, right? So, for instance, there's no shortage of things to do for family, work, business, and other things, right? But ultimately, I put whatever comes through for my family first on that list, right? Knock out the family stuff first, right? Because I value family above a lot of different things, right? And that's not to say like I'm not taking jabs at anybody on anything. I'm just saying this is how I organize it, right? This is how I roll. So I prioritize tasks based on my values, what's important in life overall. So then that's what I'm working on in terms of getting things out there or being productive, right? And another thing I typically do is I set clear goals. Now, here's the funny thing about goals, though, right? And I just learned this year because I used to set goals and become so locked in on those goals, so beholden to those goals, because that's what everybody tells you to do, right? Like if you want to be successful, you have to be obsessed with that plan A, and you can't think about do anything else, and so on and so forth, and you just become obsessed with achieving this particular thing. And I just learned this year that, and this lesson came kind of hard, right? All right, so earlier this year, I had to go in for wisdom tooth surgery. Now, that's something that you should get or supposedly was supposed to get earlier on and everything like that. But look, my those back teeth were completely laying down. They were sleeping. And in fact, they were pushing up against the front or the back of the tooth that was in front of it in many cases here, right? So, and I was like, okay, now and I get what you're saying. Where am I going with this? Just hang with me. So I got that surgery done, and the recovery process was not fun at all whatsoever, right? It was actually really rough, and I didn't respond well to many of the pain meds, and there were some complications because apparently one tooth was hard to get out, and there were some problems with my jaw, like a whole bunch of mess going on. And I had so many things to do outside, so I allowed time on my schedule, and I allowed time to recover and all that fun stuff. And and apparently it just wasn't enough time to recover. And I mean, I had a bad time with the anesthesia. I had a bad time with the pain meds after the fact. It was just It was the worst. But I'll never forget, I was sitting there in complete, like, total pain, because I couldn't keep taking the pain meds anymore for reasons. I was in complete pain, laying in my bed, bright and sunny day. I hear the boys playing downstairs. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, when is this going to be? When is this going to be over? Because I'm just like, I got this to do. I got that to do. I got that to do. And I just start praying, and I'm praying, and because there's something that was just didn't feel right within me. Like I felt off. And I'll never forget it. I heard it clear as day. You forgot about me. And from that point on, I just started to reassess everything in life, everything that I was doing, everything that I was going for, everything that I was trying to be. And then what I realized that I realized, excuse me, I realized that all of those goals that I had were goals that I had. All of those things that I wanted to do were things that I wanted to do. And so I noticed that I was saying me, and I never really once asked God if this is His will. Is this in His will for me to operate in this way? Is this in His will to progress and proceed in the aim at this particular goal? So I needed to be slowed down, is the general consensus. And everybody I tell this story to, they get the same idea. Even, you know what's funny? Even the non-believers that I tell this story to, they kind of just say, well, I guess you needed to slow down. Like it is the conclusion that everyone comes to when I tell them this story. And, maybe I did needed to be slowed down, because then I made changes after that. And there's something that I realized about goals. Goals are they're good, but they're not everything. And I know that sounds confusing, because I'm telling you to set goals, right? I'm saying what made me productive, or what makes me productive now, is that I set goals, but I understand that that's just a target, and that no outcome is ever guaranteed. So sometimes you have to be aware enough to know when to pivot. You have to be aware enough to know when to let it go. And that's not what they're telling you when it comes to setting goals and going out and accomplishing them and go hard. I don't sleep. Like, that's not what they're telling you. So my advice here, and what works for me, is to set the goal, but just know that that's a target. It is a single target. It is not the only target, and it probably will change, right? That's just the fact of the matter here. Now, I understand the tenacity that's required to achieve certain goals no matter what, and I understand what some people say when you have to be obsessed with achieving these things, but then you become obsessed with achievement, and as a believer, you tend to become so obsessed with achievement that becomes your God. And I think that's what slightly started to happen to me, or what I did, rather. So it's okay to set goals. And in fact, like I'm saying, I'm urging you to set those goals. Just understand how to operate when going to achieve those goals. You will, because you need a target. At the end of the day, you do need a target. And I'm not saying getting a target or setting a goal is bad in and of itself. Just understand what it is. Put the goal in its place, so to speak. Next up, I had to get really good at time management, right? This kind of goes hand in hand with prioritizing goals, but I had to get really good at time management. So what I do is typically, like, I'll set out certain time blocks. So I do time blocking, right? I think there's this other thing, I forgot what it was called, the Pomodoro technique, where it's like 25 minutes of like intense, like focused work, and then you put in the breaks there. You do stuff like that. But at the end of the day, just, make sure that you manage your time well, right? So you don't want to get so absorbed in something when you have a gazillion other things to do, especially if well, rather, you don't want to get absorbed in something that's lower on your priority list, and then everything else just, kind of falls apart, right? So, for lack of better terms, beef up your time management skills. Another one is and this is one that's a hard one. This one, I don't do too well at this one, but I try to eliminate distractions. Whenever you're working or doing something or trying to produce something, right? Like you inevitably there's going to be something that comes up that pulls you from it, right? You try and limit how much that happens though, but sometimes something that's higher on your priority list comes in and that becomes the distraction. That almost tells you should have been working on that in the first place, but whatever. Try to eliminate as many of the distractions as possible, so that you can actually get some concentrated, clear thinking work, and then you go from there. So and then keep it organized. Make sure I kind of big on organization. I'm semi big on organization, right? Like I tend to like things being kind of jumbled and bunched around at certain times, right? So when I'm thinking more creatively, when I'm trying to produce something that's more on a creative side, I need everything to be a mess, right? I need everything to be a mess. But if I'm doing strict structured work or something maybe for the business, to keep the business going, but it's not so much of an idea thinking thing, is more of an admin type style thing, then I need things to be organized, right? So I would say, kind of keep it organized at the proper times, right? Of course, use tools that are at your disposal, like, online tools, actual physical tools like software, programs, whatever. Like, try and automate as much as you possibly can, right? That'll free you up to do like the big valuable work, right? So if there's things that you can use tools to kind of help you get along your way, use them. Trust me. And I mean, I think that's part of the reason why there's such a big hoopla over AI. I mean, yeah, that's part of the reason why. Yeah, because it just increases, or it could, if used properly, it could increase productivity. And I'm not opposed to that at all, because I like the creative work more than I like the actual just admin, just strict structured work. So if there's anything that I can automate on the strict structure side that allows me to be more creative, I'm doing it. Right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Utilize the tools, utilize the software, utilize those different things that'll help you get along your way. I am very, very mindful of making sure I take breaks. Now, here's the thing though. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm good at taking breaks. That doesn't mean I'm good at taking breaks. I'm just mindful of the times that I need to take a break. And I know I need to take a break. I'm still working on the other part there where it's just like, hey, look, I can recognize it. Like, it's time for a break. It doesn't always work out that I actually end up taking a break, though. That's just the way it happens sometimes. But breaks are important. Breaks are very important. Another thing that you probably will want to, that you could probably take something from, I would always reassess everything. Reassess the resources I have to be productive. Reassess myself. Reassess the environment. Reassess the goals. So you should always reassess, like, on a regular basis. Almost like you should schedule a point in time where you reassess everything, just to make sure that you're still on the same wavelength and you're still on the right track to achieving a particular goal, or at least aiming in the right direction. So there's always a point where you should reassess where you are, because you could be doing a whole bunch of work that's pointless to getting you to where you want to be. And it still could be good work too. That's the thing. It still could be good work, and it can produce a good result. It just doesn't produce a result that gets you closer to the goal. And so there's always a state where you want to reassess where you are and where you're headed, right? Another little mini tip that I don't know if this falls into any other category though, but it's just like work with yourself, right? Like not against it. Don't work against yourself here, right? If you know, for instance, like if you know that you're an early morning person, right? Do the most important things, the things that are absolutely required, early morning, right? You don't want to save all that stuff for like at night if you're not a night person, right? So it's like if you're wide awake midday, wide awake, ready to go, have full energy at noon, then that's when you should do the most important work, because then there's less likely to be mistakes. Oh, of course. I'm gonna end on this one, right? Last tip that I think is absolute. Oh no, wait, not a last tip. I have one more too. Now they're just coming in. So wait, okay. Before I even get to that last tip, try and do something like, I guess what they call is like gamify it. Gamify your production. So when you're setting up the game plan and you're setting up your like to-do list, if you use those, or you're setting up your schedule, if you use those, make it like a rewards-based system almost. Hey, look, I just passed level 1, I knocked this program out. Or I just passed level 1, I did this, right? And then actually have like a reward of some sort on the tail end. You'll be more likely to kind of stay engaged in it, because it's just like, look, I'm for instance, let's just say you wanted to go out golfing at the end of a long work day. The work that you're going to do might be a little bit better knowing that, hey, look, but if I don't do this, if I don't get this done, I can't go golfing. So then I'm just going to, look, let me lock this in. let's start a lot. Or I'm going to hang out with some friends. But if I don't get this project off the ground, I gotta stay here until it's finished. Like things like that, right? You know, those, you know, doing fun things, like I talked about a couple episodes ago, doing those fun things can be a reward so that you can kind of gamify your production here, right? I find that works a lot for me, right? And I actually gamify it by playing games. So it's just like, okay, look, I'm not going to be able to play any of these video games or anything like that unless I get A, B, C, D done, right? I got to do this for the business. I got to make sure the family's good on this end, and then I got to also make sure that I have everything, all my ducks in a row for the job, for the gig. So it's just like, all right, let me make sure I get all of this done, and then I'm going to play some Sparking Zero at the end. All right, so it's just like that's what it. Believe it or not, that works. I mean, at least it works for me. So I'm just throwing it out there. Now, finally, we'll get to the last tip. The last thing that I do, the last suggestion is probably the biggest one. And it's a 3-parter here, right? Exercise, get good sleep, eat well. You knew I was going to say that. Like you come on now. I mean, but it all counts. It all counts. You live a healthy lifestyle. You make that a part of who you are. You will be more productive. It's just you'll think clearer, right? Like we don't have to go over all the benefits of working out. We don't have to go over. I mean, we pretty much have already, but you know there are a lot of benefits to all of that stuff. Exercise, sleep well. You got to get your recovery. Recovery is important, and eat well. That's it. You know. So those are my tips. That's what I do. That's the way I look at it in terms of trying to stay productive, trying to achieve these goals, or at least aim at these goals and achieve what I can achieve, right? And we'll go from there, right? So there you have it. Hopefully there's something in there that can help you out. Let me know if it does. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. That's episode 12. We talked about blood flow restriction training. We talked about how to stay productive. We talked about offset training. It was all good stuff. Now, listen, I'm not going to hold you too long or anything like that. I just want y'all to continue to listen to the very, 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 very end, right? And we're about to get there, but I'm dropping off these these random statements, but they're ideas that are just floating on in my head. And again, I'm not trying to cause an argument. I'm not trying to start a debate. It's just, I wonder if this is true, and I wonder if this is not true, and I'm making some general statements that I absolutely believe are true, right? But we're just going on from there, right? Just to, because I can't talk about all of those topics on the pod in that way. Like I can't go with like an in-depth analysis, right? I mean, I might be able to. So maybe some of them will pop up later on. Anyway, we'll get to that at the tail end here, right? But I appreciate y'all. I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. I thank you for subscribing. I thank you for downloading. And let's just keep this going, all right? In the meantime, I'm Coach Evan. This is Say Cheese and Lift Studio. And you just got finished listening to the Scal Method Podcast, your one-stop shop for not only physical fitness, but mental fitness, emotional fitness, and spiritual fitness. All right, y'all take it easy. Take care. Be safe out there. Straight up, Thomas Sowell is a national treasure, and he doesn't get nearly the respect that he deserves. Wait. All right, hold on. So wait a minute. You mean to tell me that Algerian boxer really was a dude? Come on now. So gaslighting is real. For the life of me, I don't understand businesses that push an agenda as opposed to absolutely, hands down, delighting their customers. Man, what's going on with the gaming industry? Like, it's almost like an implosion of some sorts. Like, now I've been saying this for years. Hollywood is trash. Trash. I've been saying it for years, but now we're really just starting to figure out how nasty it really is.